There's a form of power so subtle that most people mistake it for weakness. It does not raise its voice. It does not rush to defend itself. It does not scramble to correct misunderstandings or chase applause. It stands still while the world vibrates around it. And in that stillness, it becomes immovable. Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most of us learn too late. He lived in a world of daggers hidden behind silk smiles, of alliances built at dinner tables and destroyed before sunrise. He watched men rise quickly on charm and fall even faster on wounded pride. He observed rulers who lost entire kingdoms, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they could not resist reacting, because they needed to answer every insult, because they believed silence meant surrender. But silence in the hands of someone disciplined is not surrender. It is strategy. Imagine Florence in the early 1500s. The air smells of stone after rain. Torches flicker against cathedral walls. Conversations drift in low murmurs beneath frescoed ceilings. In that world, reputation is oxygen. A whisper can poison it. A rumor can suffocate it. A nobleman makes a calculated remark across the hall. Not loud enough to be called an accusation, not soft enough to be dismissed as private. It is bait, designed to sting, designed to provoke movement. Every eye subtly shifts to the target. The expected response is predictable, a tightening jaw, a forced smile, a sharp retort disguised as wit. The dance of ego begins, and both men become performers in a drama neither fully controls. But the dangerous man, the one Machiavelli would quietly observe, does not move. He continues his conversation. His breathing remains even. His gaze does not dart across the room in search of the source. The whisper dies where it was born, and something almost invisible happens. The room recalibrates, because attention is not just awareness, it is validation. When you respond, you acknowledge the attack as significant. You confirm that it struck something inside you. You reveal the location of your pressure points. But when you do not respond, you force the aggressor into a new and uncomfortable position. They must sit with their own words. They must wonder if anyone noticed. They must question whether they misjudged their influence. In that silence, doubt blooms, and doubt is heavier than confrontation. If you've ever watched someone try to provoke you and felt the power of not moving, then like this video. Not to show agreement, but to mark that you understand something most people never will. That the one who controls his reactions controls the room. Most people cannot tolerate this approach because their sense of self is still under construction. Every comment feels like an inspection. Every slight feels like exposure. So they defend reflexively, not strategically. They over-explain, they justify, they attempt to repair what they assume has been damaged. But Machiavelli understood that power is not proven by reaction. It is proven by restraint. He wrote about rulers who maintained authority not by crushing every critic, but by carefully choosing when to act and when to remain still. A prince who turns at every bark from the crowd is no longer leading. He is being led. He is dragged by noise. He becomes reactive rather than deliberate. And once you are reactive, you are predictable. Predictability is a gift to those who want to control you. Consider a modern boardroom, glass walls, polished table, the quiet hum of air conditioning blending with the tension of ambition. You present an idea. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Another reframes your proposal, subtly claiming ownership. A third raises doubts with a tone just skeptical enough to shift perception. Your body reacts before your mind does. Your pulse quickens. A familiar urgency rises. Correct them, clarify, reassert control. In that suspended moment, your next move will define the energy of the room. If you rush to defend yourself, you shrink into explanation. You begin negotiating your competence publicly. You expose your emotional stake. But if you pause, if you let the interruption hang in the air, you introduce gravity. You allow silence to expand. You choose your words slowly, or perhaps not at all. The room senses it. When you do not scramble, you imply confidence. When you do not chase credit, you imply security. When you do not fight for the spotlight, you imply that you are accustomed to it. People respond not just to what you say, but to what you tolerate. And when you tolerate nothing beneath you, without theatrical resistance, you elevate yourself without effort. Ignoring is not about blindness. It is about filtration. You must hear everything. You must notice every shift in tone, every attempt to provoke, every subtle maneuver for dominance. Strategic ignoring requires awareness sharper than confrontation. You cannot choose what to dismiss if you do not recognize it fully. The art lies in deciding what deserves your energy. Energy is the most valuable currency you possess, more valuable than money, more valuable than status. Because once spent, it cannot be reclaimed. Every emotional reaction is an investment. Every argument is a transaction. Every defensive explanation is a withdrawal from your long-term focus. Machiavelli saw that rulers who spent themselves on minor disputes weakened their position for major conflicts. The same principle applies to individuals. If you are entangled in every petty tension, you cannot build anything substantial. There's also something deeply psychological at work. Humans are wired to seek acknowledgement. We measure our relevance by response. When someone insults you, they are not just expressing hostility, they are testing influence. They are asking, without saying it directly, "Can I move you?" The moment you react impulsively, you answer, "Yes." But when you remain steady, you introduce uncertainty. And uncertainty destabilizes the aggressor far more effectively than anger ever could. Think about online criticism. A stranger writes something cutting beneath your work. They mock your appearance. They question your intelligence. They attempt to provoke outrage. The immediate instinct is to reply, to dismantle their argument publicly, to defend your identity before others interpret silence as weakness. But the algorithm feeds on engagement. Conflict spreads faster than clarity. If you respond, you elevate the comment. You invite spectators. You turn a spark into spectacle. If you ignore it, truly ignore it, it fades into the endless scroll of digital noise, not because it lacked venom, but because you refused to provide oxygen. Silence can suffocate negativity when used with discipline. Yet there is a more profound dimension to this art, one that has nothing to do with others and everything to do with yourself. Ignoring is impossible if you are addicted to validation, if you need constant reassurance that you are respected, admired, and understood. Then every slight becomes unbearable. You will chase approval the way a thirsty man chases water, even when the source is poisoned. But when you cultivate internal solidity, when your identity is anchored in something deeper than public opinion, you gain the freedom to choose your battles carefully. You no longer react to protect your ego. You respond only when it serves your direction. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of appearing virtuous while maintaining strategic flexibility beneath the surface. In many ways, ignoring is an expression of this principle. You appear calm, unbothered, even indifferent. But beneath that calm is sharp calculation. Beneath that indifference is discipline. You are not ignoring because you are incapable of confrontation. You are ignoring because you understand timing. Timing determines whether a response builds authority or erodes it. A reaction delivered in emotion feels defensive. A response delivered in calm feels deliberate. And sometimes the most devastating response is delayed, delivered not in words but in outcome. Imagine someone repeatedly underestimating you, making subtle remarks about your competence, doubting your vision publicly. If you argue each time, you become entangled in their narrative. You position yourself as someone fighting for validation. But if you continue improving, continue building, continue succeeding quietly, your growth becomes the answer. And outcomes are arguments that require no explanation. There's a reason silence feels uncomfortable in conversation. When you do not fill the gap, others feel exposed. They begin replaying their own words. They wonder if they overstepped. They sense imbalance. You have shifted the tempo. In chess, tempo determines advantage. The player who dictates rhythm forces the opponent into reaction. In life, the person who refuses to react on command dictates emotional tempo. When you ignore strategically, you control pacing. And control of pacing is control of power. But this art is delicate. Ignore too much, and you become disconnected. You risk appearing disengaged or arrogant. The mastery lies in discernment, knowing which voices matter and which are noise. Ignore disrespect that seeks attention. Do not ignore patterns that require boundaries. Ignore provocation. Do not ignore principles. This balance is what separates maturity from avoidance. Machiavelli would likely caution that silence should never be mistaken for passivity. Strategic ignoring is active. It is chosen. It is intentional. It is a refusal to be manipulated. Consider relationships. Sometimes a partner tests emotional access, a sharp comment, a small jealousy game, a subtle withdrawal designed to trigger pursuit. If you always react immediately, apologizing, explaining, reassuring, you reinforce the pattern. You teach them that tension guarantees attention. But when you remain grounded, when you do not reward manipulative behavior with emotional fireworks, the dynamic shifts. You communicate that connection is available, but not at the cost of self-respect. Ignoring, in this sense, becomes a boundary without announcement. It is strength expressed softly. The deeper truth is this: when you master ignoring, you stop living in reaction to others' emotions. You stop allowing external noise to dictate internal weather. Most people are moved constantly by headlines, by opinions, by subtle social cues. Their mood shifts with every interaction. They are leaves in a storm of stimuli. But the person who has learned to ignore strategically becomes the tree, rooted, unhurried, aware of the wind, but not carried by it. And something extraordinary happens when you reach that state. People begin to approach you differently. They measure their words more carefully. They sense that you cannot be easily provoked, that your approval is not cheaply won, that your attention is selective. Selective attention creates value. When everyone has access to you, your presence feels ordinary. When your engagement must be earned, it feels significant. This is why the less you explain, the more your actions define you. The less you chase, the more you are pursued. The less you react, the more composed you appear. In a world addicted to noise, composure feels rare. And rarity commands respect. If you are learning to become difficult to disturb, subscribe. Not everyone is meant to think this way. Not everyone can tolerate this level of discipline. But if you intend to master yourself instead of reacting like the crowd, this is where you belong. Machiavelli observed rulers who maintained authority not by constant assertion, but by controlled mystery. They did not reveal every thought. They did not answer every rumor. They allowed uncertainty to work in their favor. There is a certain mystique in silence. When you do not immediately respond, people fill the gap with their own assumptions. Often those assumptions elevate you beyond what explanation ever could. But the ultimate purpose of ignoring is not manipulation. It is freedom. Freedom from unnecessary conflict. Freedom from emotional exhaustion. Freedom from the need to win every argument. You begin to realize that many battles are invitations to distraction, that some provocations exist solely to pull you away from your trajectory, that certain individuals thrive on reaction because it gives them relevance. When you ignore strategically, you deny them that relevance. You protect your direction. And over time, your life becomes quieter. Not because the world stopped talking, but because you stopped listening to everything. There is something deeply empowering about that shift. You wake up less concerned with who misunderstands you. You move with less urgency to defend your image. You build with more focus because your energy is no longer scattered across trivial disputes. You choose what enters your mind. You choose what lingers. You choose what deserves a response. And that choice, repeated consistently, transforms you. Machiavelli's world was ruthless, but human psychology has not changed. Ego still tempts us to react. Pride still demands defense. Fear still whispers that silence equals weakness. But discipline whispers something else. It says that not every voice deserves your breath, that not every insult deserves your fire, that not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Sometimes the strongest statement is the one you never make. Sometimes the clearest boundary is the one you do not announce. And sometimes the greatest power is revealed in what you refuse to entertain. So the next time you feel that familiar surge, the urge to respond instantly, to correct, to defend, pause. Ask yourself whether this moment deserves your energy. Ask yourself whether reacting strengthens your position or weakens it. Ask yourself whether silence might serve you better. Because the art of ignoring is not about disappearing. It is about remaining unshaken. It is about protecting your focus. With the same seriousness a ruler protects his throne. And when you truly master it, something remarkable happens. The world continues to speak, but you are no longer moved by every word. You become deliberate. You become measured. You become difficult to disturb. And in a world that thrives on reaction, that alone makes you powerful.